Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to discuss Nemesis Games. I believe it's the fifth book in the Expanse series. We've been reading this together for 5 months, a little bit over 5 months. That's wild, isn't it? Yeah, it's been a fun time. So, here with the group, so Chris, will you start us off with some introductions?
Yeah, name's Chris Moen. I'm a sometimes YouTuber. Haven't made a video in nearly a month, but I've been doing lots of reading in that time, which is another good way to spend your time. I do recommend.
And Robin.
Sure. I'm Robin from Bookends and Biscuits YouTube channel, where I also haven't done a video for a while because I've been busy, but usually do the sci-fi, sprinkling of fantasy nowadays, and some crime as well. So that's kind of my channel.
Awesome. And Layla.
I'm Layla Goshi. I am an English professor and writer, and I love reading fantasy, science fiction, horror, etc.
Yes. I hope we don't take you away from your other work too much because we bother you quite a bit. So I hope we're not taking away from your other work.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I have many irons in the fire.
Okay. Well,
Oh yeah. So this is,
okay.
I love this. This is actually, yeah, it's a really fun and rewarding time.
Awesome. Yeah.
I enjoy
Hope we don't-
reading and hearing what others have to say about things.
Well, we're happy to have you as always. So so we're on the fifth book. The fourth book was Sibylla Byrne, right?
It was indeed, yes.
Yeah. So that one it was kind of a meh read. I enjoyed this one quite a bit more. What did all of you think?
Yeah, for me, it's the best book of the series so far. Certainly the only other one that's really comparable to the first book, I think, in some ways. So, yeah, lots of excitement, lots of good relationships, and lots of good interactions between people. I think that were some of my quick highlights.
Yeah, same here. I absolutely love this one. I think I couldn't tell. The first book probably has like a place in my heart because it's the first one, but this probably quite easily is up there with almost being my favorite from the series. I loved it. I thought we're back with the actual crew from the Rossi, and the just all bits and pieces going over and overlapping in the different areas. I thought it was great. I loved it.
I enjoyed it too. I think the fact that we got a lot more backstory on all of the characters was helpful, and that made it really engaging for me.
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of things I want to ask you all about. Which so the first thing, I guess we can start. I don't want to pick on Naomi and Holden too fast, but I thought I thought the characters, they're much more interesting and they're much more funner to read when they're by themselves or when they're off doing other things, when they're not together. I enjoy the found family aspects and the whole camaraderie, but I think when they're doing their own thing and they're kind of off on their own quest or their own, have their own things going on, I think they're much more interesting that way.
Yeah, this book really brought it home to me about how uninteresting this Holden Naomi relationship was, because there's lots of other really good interplays, like Alex and Bobby together, great together. Amos and Clarissa, obviously great together. Even Fred and Holden, really great together. And I know why they're doing it, because it's nearly the reason for being for Holden is the bit that she holds in the centre. But by the time they get back together, I was like, actually, I'd be much more believe a Fred Holden romance at this stage than I would Naomi.
Oh, I don't know. I think from this one you got a bit more background about it, so I quite liked it this time because you kind of had a little more understanding about why she'd been so reserved and wouldn't give the history. You've got him still being a puppy dog and everything else, but kind of maybe being a little bit more understanding of it. And I liked how it almost cemented their relationship a little bit more in this one. Also, I'm not a fan of Peaches, so I think I don't like that relationship at all.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised to hear that. Okay.
Not too bad, but yeah.
Yeah, I there's some unreality to me with Naomi and where's my brain going? With their relationship. I feel that you know, a lot more questions would have been asked um, in a real relationship. But it does, you know, it does work in that it gives uh, it gives a dramatic. It makes it more entertaining. You know that Holden. That's what I was trying to think of. Holden finds out about her past in this way instead of just a nice conversation over a glass of wine. You know, they go off and Earth gets blasted. You know, and then she, comes back to tell him, what had happened. But I feel like there are some things to examine. I think it is overall a good relationship in the story, but I think there's things to examine about the whole process. Like I wonder about Naomi. You know, she Naomi responds to things. She doesn't um, instigate things. And I just think that's interesting. And maybe they purposely wrote her that way, you know, like I think she responds more to like Holden has his dreams and she's like trying to keep him in check. And then here comes her ex and he's, they've got some problem. And then here she goes to do that. But it's more like response versus her taking on a leadership role, if that makes sense. And so that's just some things that made me think, like knowing how her husband was, ex-husband, why would she have trusted him? But, you know.
I wonder if it's because he's the exact opposite. He's almost the mirror, is the opposite of her ex-husband. Holden's more of a reserved, I don't want to say goofball, because he is, he seems very, I don't want to say innocent, but he seems very kind-hearted. He seems like he's well-intentioned, even if he gets in his own way quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess with one of the things they said about Mark, by the way, who I think is the most fantastic villain ever. I love him as a villain.
Really
I think he's brilliant. But with him having plans within plans and plans and never knowing where he's coming from or what he's doing, Holden's always been just straight down the line. Like, he tells you as it is. He doesn't have secrets, everything like that. So he's very open as a person compared to, I assume, what Marco Norris would have been as a relationship partner.
Yeah.
So definitely very different people.
Yeah, I think the book sourced to try to paint the two of them as similar in some ways. And Naomi's eye, like they come from that kind of alpha male background that she's obviously attracted to. But I read it a bit like you, Stephen, the fact that they were kind of near the opposite ends of the spectrum of the alpha male, that one does it kind of in this kind of very upfront, bright, braggy way, and the other one is very reserved and kind of strength of character rather than necessarily being domineering and narcissistic about it.
I guess they're both leaders, which would be the kind of the comparison of them being similar and what she's drawn to. But yeah, very different people. Very different people.
Yeah. Just want to say hi to Cool Gamer. Hey, Cool Gamer, thanks for coming by. And of course, our friend Aaron is here. Hey, Aaron, thanks for hanging out with us. I know, I forget which one of you mentioned the Bobby and Alex. That was great. I love those. I mean, that was so much fun to hear them, to see them connect that way and to kind of swap stories. And I loved getting to know Alex and Bobby a lot more in this one.
Yeah. Me too. And Alex was, bless his heart, he was so idealistic about his ex. And I wonder if it was more nostalgia. I feel like some nostalgia about the way things was what was really driving him. And he had to have that moment to realize that the past was the past. And maybe he'd been living on the past,
I think that there's that thing, isn't there, if you always think what if. I think maybe he was having his what if moment and I needed to close it out for him personally. But what did you guys, I thought his wife was very harsh, but obviously you know what he did. Essentially, like, she waited for him forever, and then when he came back, he was like just signed to go off. But I was like, as a person, I don't know if I could have been that kind of cut and dry about it. Like, you'd want to at least explore it with the other person, and I just thought, wow, it's like the strength of being able to, I just like don't even want to engage with you, was a whole thing that I was like, I didn't almost get, just because I don't know if I could have just done that without being curious to see why he was there or whatever else. I don't know if you guys thought that, or thought that she was completely justified in just being like, absolutely not.
I think there's a lot of subtext that wasn't actually in the book that you kind of read into it. I think as we make our way through the book, we realise that actually this crew of the Rocinante are celebrities. They've been on the TV screens. Everybody knows who they are. And he's obviously lived through this very traumatic period of his life where he's had lots of time for reflection and kind of reevaluate what's important to him. Whereas she's been on Mars with her life and her family and doing that kind of stuff and not doing any of that kind of stuff. So the reasons for him coming back made more sense, but she's just lived the same life. So, I mean, she must be looking at him being on the TV screen going, oh, great for him, all this kind of stuff. Now he's going to come back and sweep me off my feet. I'm not going to go there. That's not good for me.
I didn't actually think about the whole fact that she would have seen the fact that he's been on the TV, or not TV, but he's been in the news, and so she would have had some understanding of where he's been actually already. I didn't think about that at all. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, it's something that just came up through as more and more through the book as we went through, as the relationship started to appear, and it became very clear, obviously, with the relationship with Avasarala, with all of the crew, you know, how close they were. It was pointed out later on how like, oh yeah, these people are quite prominent in the world, never mind just in the books that we're reading.
Kind of wonder too. I'm sorry, Layla, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I got a sense with all of them, they had to have that moment back for us as readers, as well as them, to understand that the Rocinante is home. You know, they're disconnected in one way or another from whatever that previous life was, and that's what made me love it. You know, to really realize, okay, they're coming together for real now. You know, even after all they've been through.
I did want to consider it too, like military families, how when someone leaves their spouse behind or their family behind, and they go out and they're living this totally different life with this, you know, danger and adventure and violence and everything else, and they see all these terrible things and they experience all these terrible things, and then when they return home, they're different people, and then everyone else is living the same life. Kind of everyone else goes on without you, and then when you go back, it's not the same anymore. It's never the same, which is kind of what military families is kind of what I got out of it too.
Yeah, it's a great point. And also you've got to remember that Alex was going back just to end it better rather than salvage the relationship. I think, you know, it wasn't even like he was hoping to reignite something. It was very much to make himself feel better, and in that way I think she was kind of justified in her response, because like he was just going to dredge up old to make himself feel better rather than kind of do anything for her.
Yeah, that's very true. It was completely about him. It was completely about him trying to like not feel so bad about what he'd done. So yeah, agreed.
Good, very legal.
Yeah, and I never got, you know, in regard to Amos's experience, I never got whether, I guess the woman he was looking for was like a surrogate mother to him, not his real mother. And I really liked knowing about that, and that he was trying to make something right for her, his surrogate mother's husband, you know, who had taken care of her. So I think that showed we'd already seen that side of Amos, I think, you know, more sympathetic side, but this brought it home to me. And I did find it poignant that just as he kind of had that closure, I guess, you know, Earth was destroyed, and it's like all of that suddenly passed away, not just his life, but you know, his history, but Earth's history as well. And you know, there's a lot to talk about with that, I think, in regard to the Earth situation. But he was like that one individual example of everyone else. You know.
I think Amos in general is my favorite character and always has been. I think he's brilliant. But I just think I loved the way that they showed, because obviously he's got a very unique psyche and everything else. But I love the way they kind of showed him how he just doesn't deal with emotions at all. But they showed that really well, I thought, and about the fact that he didn't even realize that he was feeling kind of upset that maybe she had passed and everything else. If you you should read the short stories, because it's a really good piece on Amos's background, and in particular in relation to this lady in book 10 or whatever it is from the series. So you get to see a lot of their very odd, I would say, relationship and background of the relationship. So actually having read that first, it kind of it really supplemented this book very well about his background and what he was doing. Is it Boston? In Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yeah. It has to be. Yeah, and kind of the background of his relationships there was really good. So I would suggest reading that at some point as well.
And that's in book 10?
Yeah, the book 10, which is like a
Memories Legion, the
one that's a bunch
short
of
story anthology.
Yeah,
Oh,
anthology, yeah. That was the word I was looking for. So, yeah. Which is really good. Do you guys have a favorite? Oh, go.
I was going to say, Amos is just one of those characters who doesn't really think for himself. He makes his decision. Mirren is the example that other people led from. So you see him refer to it's what Holden would have done. What would Alex do in this situation? What would Naomi do in this situation? If he's not going to murder and take the straight line approach, it's very right. What would everybody else do? And he sees himself in those terms.
But I liked it. Like it was near the end when you had Clarissa kind of questioning some of his choices, and him almost realizing that like he needs that moral compass, because he doesn't really care. He's just like they die sort of thing, and him having that realization. I think where previously like he was saying he followed Naomi around because she was a good moral compass, and then in the Ross and Under he follows Holden around because he just doesn't see anything wrong with just doing things as he needs to do them, or how I guess he thinks he needs to do them. So yeah, that was interesting. I think he does think. I just don't think he doesn't have the morals, does he? So he just does the straight line, how to get through sort of thing. Because I kind of like that, because I think one of the reasons I like him is because he's not just a classic meathead. He is, but he also is a little bit more complex. And I kind of like that the thought process that goes into that, which is nice, because he can tell that he's not how he should be. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much because I like him as a character.
No, he is great.
I get the sense that there's an emotional block that prevents him from really showing his intelligence or his sensitivity or empathy. I think it's there. I feel like we get it in very brief drips and drabs, and he does have that awareness to know he needs a moral compass. And I wonder what draws him to Peaches or Clarissa. Is it that she's a killer?
I think he may empathize with her a little bit, and I think Amos has a hard time, or stops himself from expressing emotion, or from letting people know that he's feeling emotions, because I think in his past life that would be seen as a weakness. He would be it would be something that people could exploit, or he would feel less than, or he wouldn't be taken as seriously in that world he lived in before. So I think that's why he's like this force of nature, but he's also very self-aware. So I love him. He's one of my favorite characters in this book too.
Yeah.
Or the series. And Aaron had a comment. The main crew besides Holden really got fleshed out in this book. I like the technique of pairing them off with secondary characters. It helps all of them to develop. That's a good point.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about the entire book, for sure, is these secondary relationships that they had, and how it brought, actually, as Aaron correctly said, brings them out of themselves and kind of gives us an insight into them, especially the ones that aren't romantic in nature at all. You can have really good close friendships, and really, that's not really a dig at the Holden Naomi thing, but just in general, it was nice to have the Alex and Bobby relationship not become romantic, if you know what I mean. I think it give it real strength, and give the idea that they were just doing it for each other, and as part of the family, rather than kind of wanting to get anything else out of it.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. I loved the thing, because there were some parts where they could have gone that way, like it could have been written that way, and it was all the better for the fact that it was just like a really good friendship, them looking out for each other, them caring about each other, and helping them get through. I think that was really good. I agree fully in that.
I think their shared military background and their shared Mars background, coupled with Alex realizing that he's a pilot. He's not looking for a relationship, or or I guess his love for his career will overshadow relationships. And so that realization, I think the friendship with Bobby is like a way for him to stabilize, and a way for her to stabilize based on what she's been through in the past as well.
I also really that was a question, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I also really love the between those two, they had the whole discussion about where their loyalties lie. Like, is it to Mars, is it to Earth, because they have Asfala, I can't say her name, but the wondrous lady, and then, or was it the Rocinante and everything else? Like, it was a really good discussion they had. I know it's a bit further along in the book, just about where their loyalties lie, and how they kind of navigate through that process, being a part of the different families they have, I guess. And it was nice to hear them discuss that and have the little back and forth, almost not argument, but debate about how they were going to manage different bits and pieces, and about whether they're going to go for Mars or they were going to support Earth or whatever else. So it was really lovely relationship.
I love those philosophical debates when they come up in the book, like the ones where they do delve into, there's a reason you swear allegiance. It's for exactly situations like this, and the things you're facing. So fabulous. Yeah.
Aaron had a question. Which characters did you enjoy more than you had before in this book? And I think I'm the exact opposite of Robin. I actually liked Peaches in this book. I actually started, and I felt like I know I shouldn't, but I don't know, something. I think that just that duo of her and Amos together, I really enjoyed that back and forth, that that interaction. So maybe it's Amos rubbed off on her a little bit, but I enjoyed that character a lot more now.
I agree that their little like story arc together was nice. I enjoyed their kind of story thing. What I didn't like is, I think Lily, you said this previously about that she hasn't had a redemption arc. She's sat around in prison for a while, okay, but she's not developed as far as I can tell as a person. She's not really made any huge strides. Like the fact that at the end, spoiler, that she's loud back on the like Ross. I just don't think she's come far enough as a character. And also had the one absolute cringe part in the book that I just didn't get, which was the discussion when she was in the office with Amos's friend. Is it Eric?
Eric, yeah.
And then he just bursts into tears because she's like, I know how you feel. And it's like, really? That was the one with the book I didn't enjoy. And I was just like, I just don't. I think I liked her more when she was a bad guy, to be honest, because I could understand it. But I don't think she's redeemed herself enough.
That bit was dreadful. It was absolutely woeful. I was like, what has just happened here? The problem for me is, and again, I suppose it's my major criticism of the entire book series. There's so much happens for convenience that they set up. I don't really see why Amos would have visited Clarissa in prison to set off the whole chain of events that comes after it. Where did they kind of get on so well beforehand? Maybe he does identify with her, but I mean, given everything else that's swimming in his head and what he's doing, it just seemed unlikely. And then for them to bond so much so quickly, I don't know. It just like you said, because she hadn't had a redemptive arc yet, it wasn't like, I feel like it was justified that Amos said, "Well, I can take it from here," or I can use this person from here. But yeah.
For me, I would say probably Naomi, because she's not been. You haven't seen much of her character fleshed out. She's very much been a romantic interest and a really good engineer, but not much kind of around her background, where she's come from. And I don't know if this was because I really hated her in this season of the TV series, hated how they played it. I thought she was portrayed as really weak and not a strong character, which I think she quite is. And in this one, you really got a lot more of her internal monologue about how her thought processes, why she'd left him behind, and the fact that actually she was still a very strong character, having done that and escaped. And you got to see how she was playing it, whereas in the TV series she was like a wet flannel. I was like, wait, stop, what are you doing, sort of thing. So I think for me it was Naomi much in this book, because you got to know a lot more about her, and then her thought processes and where she came from. So yeah.
Robin, you've just reminded me, actually, because my biggest memory of this book with Naomi was I felt like, she fell into the trap, and I had wanted to see her be more assertive, about the situation. But then she had this amazing escape at the end where she did, take her life in her hands and put herself on the line for her friends, even toward the end. And so that kind of helps her recover from that. So that just reminded me. Thank you. But, in terms of characters, I enjoyed all of them more, but I did feel like I got a little more understanding of Fred Johnson, of all people. He's kind of like hanging back there for me as first I thought he was, he had essentially flipped, to be OPA. And so I thought he'd be a loyal OPA. And I actually thought that somehow in this, I couldn't quite remember what happened in the show, but I thought, well, okay, he's going to make some deal with Marcus, or something's going to happen here. And, but he kept, I think, a moral compass, and also, even though he had fired Holden, he still was giving him a berth and giving the Rocinante a berth. And so I just appreciated him as, I guess we'd call him a secondary character. Do you think he is? Yeah. So, but developed more him. Yeah.
He's super interesting because he's another alpha male, but he's very much a product of his council. He's willing to have conversations about what he should do and why he should do it. Ultimately makes up his own mind, but people feed into him an awful lot, and he seems to kind of go with the group dynamic a lot in that sense.
Yeah.
Everybody grew in this, but if it was possible to love Christian Adversar a lot more beforehand, I roared laughing multiple times out loud in this book with her interactions with, especially Amos. The first interaction when he starts calling her Chrissy, I just thought was hilarious.
And how well
Every
is she
time.
portrayed, right? I mean, she's portrayed perfectly in the series, I thought. I mean, just
Yeah.
That was such a good casting.
Yeah.
Such a good casting. Yeah. She has some just excellent one-liners in the book, doesn't she? Just brilliant. It's really good.
And Aaron had a comment. I sense Clarissa's redemption is yet to come, but agree that Amos relates to her because they both have done some bad things and are aware of it. And Chris, you mentioned a lot of things happen out of convenience, and I totally agree. I think part of Clarissa's, knowing that she has this damage and she's, has her time is limited. I think that, in a sense, I think they kind of use that as a way for us to feel sorry for her. So she does, not a redemption arc, but a way for us to feel sympathy for her, even when we shouldn't, because she's done some really terrible things.
Steve, when you said that about we feel a certain way, even though we shouldn't, I'm really recognizing that is like a theme of this book, because I find myself feeling sorry for Philippe, even though he's just blasted Earth, 2 or 3 times, because he's under the spell of his father, and he really has no experience outside of just, a spaceship, basically, to really understand what what is actually on Earth or any planet, probably. So, but when you said that, that made me think Philippe is another one that's going to need to have a redemption arc, just like Clarissa, because she killed what, hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
So,
can't remember. She blew up the ship, didn't she? So I can't remember exactly.
yeah.
How they said it at the end, but I can't remember exactly how many. A lot.
But the points made in the book, isn't it? That she killed indiscriminately the entire ship, but she also killed people who were her friends. You know, the maintenance worker who was working with them. You know, looked them dead in the eye and still killed them. And also Naomi, it's very clear, has done some horrendous stuff in her past as well. She's also a monster of another time, also probably because of Marcos, etc. But had responsible for hundreds and hundreds and possibly thousands of deaths herself. So it is kind of dark in that way, except she's like the heroine of the story. It's really it's an interesting kind of way to play everybody and show everybody.
Yeah, but I think how they played, with the Naomi thing, she was unaware
Yes.
that her program was going to be used in that way. Although
Yes.
how you would be unaware, I'm not sure. But yeah, whereas Clarissa did it, and she was very actively knew what she was doing. So I think they kind of that's the kind of slight difference between those two characters on that point.
First degree murder, second degree murder, third degree murder.
Exactly.
Indeed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Yeah, so it really makes me wonder. I'm not wondering what they're getting at. I guess I'm interested, is a better word, in this underlying theme that I'm kind of taking that they're saying, are we all sinners in some way? You know, I don't consider myself that bad. I mean, but you know, it seems like everybody that we like is responsible for some horrendous situation, because Holden got people killed too with the, you know, with the war. So it's just a really fascinating part of this series to me.
It's a really nasty world. There's no real innocent people that seem to be in any position of power or anywhere that haven't compromised themselves in some way or committed something in some way that they wish they could step back from.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
But I think, isn't that more realistic?
Yeah.
I guess, because there's very much, again, going back to the whole, you know, Holden being a paladin sort of thing. I think there will be reasons that people were a bit meh about him is because of that aspect. So yeah, having a little bit more of a realistic, that everyone actually probably has made bad decisions down the line at somewhere, is a little bit. That's why everyone loves grey characters. So
For sure.
I kind of see this world as almost like the Wild West, where everyone has done something to survive, or out of necessity or survival. Everyone's done something, so everyone has some kind of something on their hands because of the world that just, or the universe they live in, I guess, not the world, but
yeah.
But speaking of Holden, after being so eager to tell everyone everything, he does a great job at keeping the protomolecule a secret for so long, doesn't he? I mean, it's surprised with that one.
Character growth.
Less naive, I think, for sure. You know, the effective Miller and protomolecule Miller is definitely rubbed off on him. You know, the two of those. There was that whole thing about doors and windows at the start of the book. I really liked that at the start when the attacks were happening. I thought that was really nice touch as well.
In hindsight, it is very strange that it was kept in Fred's office. You know, that kind of thing can get around, and it did. So, but you know, it made a good story. But yeah,
convenient, right?
Yeah.
And Aaron had a question. What did you guys think of Marco? Is he just felt like a brainwashed fanatic, or more complex, and we haven't fully delved into why? I can't decide. I think Robin, you mentioned Marco as a villain, right?
I loved him. I thought it was fabulous. I loved is he just brainwashed, fanatic, or more complex? I would say I don't know, because I liked him as a character because charismatic, very interesting. I thought he was more complex. I think that's where he came across actually quite heavily, because he had a lot of the reasons he was doing stuff made sense, and I really liked that as well, because I was really worried about how they were gonna, why on earth the belt would do all of these things, but the idea that actually they would be left behind and wouldn't be able to land on the planets, and then wouldn't have a job, so would essentially just be not able to do anything, I thought was a really interesting idea. And I think he was pretty complex, just when Naomi was talking about him having plans inside plans inside plans. And although maybe he wasn't seen as a huge threat initially, he obviously was more adept than they thought he was. And the other thing about it that I really liked was the fact that the whole time the OPA has been put up as this kind of big terrorist threat, but it never really materialized. You kind of saw the end of it, and about them trying to get at the table and become a real government and a threat and everything else. And it kind of brings it all back to actually the fact that they are a terrorist cell essentially, or a terrorist group, and they are really scary. Like, they've done something that nobody who had ever been from Earth or Mars would ever even consider doing. So I just liked the fact that it was not outrageous. That's not the right word, but outrageous. And I just liked him. I don't know what else to say. I just thought he was a really good character, which is nice.
I don't think I see him as brainwashed as much as I do see him as a personality that seeks power. So, like, he, sought power over Naomi, and then when he lost Naomi, power over his son and his other followers. And so I think he just has that personality characteristic that wherever he would have been planted, he would have sought the power he could get. And with the issues surrounding the issues of the belt and how dependent they are on Earth and Mars, he found a way to tap into that. So that's kind of how I see, he tapped into that so to get followers. But at the end, he just has a personality that seeks power.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I like the exploration that Fred actually did of him. When he was asked about, did you see Marco as a threat? And he said, well, yes, but not in this sense. So he obviously isn't the power behind the throne kind of thing. But I think for any good revolutionary, you can look through the history of mankind for this. There has to be the circumstances that exist for somebody as charismatic as that to be able to rise up. There has to be a message that they tap into and say, actually, we are being repressed, or otherwise, for people to say, look, we're going to do something about it. And for an initial wave of killing to be acceptable to those people, that has to happen for them to raise the power. And as the book rightly points out, it's one thing to do that and raise popularity, but holding that message is going to be very difficult for him. But a super interesting character to read, especially when you see the relationships and all the people have from on the ship, and that he's been able to gather over his while, never mind his son. Even the fact that when they capture Naomi, a lot of the crew assume that Marco will win her over again. It's very much seen that actually if she keeps around here, she is a prisoner, but we'll let her work, we'll let her get involved with the crew. She'd come around because this is good cause and once she believes with her. So
hearing all of your thoughts, it made me wonder, kind of put it all together with, did he seek power? Did the right ingredients exist in him and in the situation for him to thrive? Because he probably didn't feel like he had power in the belt, and he became this angry person wanting to seek revenge because of, like we said, it's almost like the Wild West, and all these people who are suffering, and someone who grows up into that with this bitterness and anger and resentment, that the right ingredients were there for him to become this, whether he's brainwashed or more complex, just this villain, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with Lily though. I think had he been born on Earth, he probably would have been like a some sort of political activist or something that was happening on Earth. Like, I think that was he being charismatic and wanted to be a leader. I think he probably would have been that wherever he had been, or that's at least the impression I got very much. But no, I just think, yeah, again, the fact that there was this big thing in the belt, and there's already all these troubles and background thoughts about it, and bad conditions probably obviously were required to get to that point.
And so they literally flat out what when the proto molecule was revealed. Well, we never learned, but I guess that's the point.
Indeed.
I agree that it's a great parallel or frontier industrial experience. There is always a group left behind because of change.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't, if you don't look at all the people that are involved in the situation, you just create, like I say, the atmosphere for this kind of rebellion to build. And I do think Marco is a character who's very much dominated by the male ego. He obviously is charismatic. He's portrayed in the TV series, but also in the book here has been a handsome man, somebody that was good looking. People would have gravitated to him. And when people started looking to him for guidance, his ego started to run away with himself, and he kind of seems to have got the Messiah complex to say, I will save all of the people and get what we want to do. So it kind of just probably built step by step for him to the point that he is where he is. And that's one of the reasons that I think he's such a great villain and such a great character to read.
I also think it was interesting because the way, although it didn't go into massively in depth, the way they said that Naomi fell into their kind of thing is very believable. The fact that it's just actually who you hang around with, where you end up going, and then you get slowly drawn into something like that. Very believable. Yeah, I absolutely believe that could have happened, sort of thing. And I guess that showed that how the start of him, or how the start of that kind of group began, would be something that could occur, which I also quite liked as well. It wasn't just like a random bad that just popped up for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron commented, and yes, the history of our world has many figures who had the right circumstances and personality.
Mm-hmm.
For good and for bad, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the kind of the Earth and Mars, when they start noticing people leaving and they're trying to keep people there, it kind of reminded me of Small Town America in a way, that the kind of the forgotten worlds, and they become like these remnants of the past. Everyone else is moving on, and they are kind of left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or a small town anywhere, I guess.
Do you mean that Mars would be the small town because it's just got the 5 people left on Mars?
Everyone's leaving, and they were once this thriving this destination, and now they're just kind of an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
And it also links to the fact that obviously they've got their own internal struggles, because somebody was selling off the ships to Marco.
Mm-hmm.
So the conditions had to exist for the unrest to happen, and the split in the Washington Military High Command, or some way to kind of say, like, we got to do something about this new world order that we've got coming. Where you go, Marco?
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting thing, that it's not just Marco. It's we've got this whole new frontier now, and all kinds of movements are probably going to emerge. So I'm very interested to see how that develops in the next book, because with Earth really experiencing a setback, and then Mars not being viable with atmosphere, and then you've got these 2 new Earth-like planets, or one at least. I can't remember, is there 1 or 2 and that they found on the other side? But anyway, so it's I think that sets up for another great advance in the story.
I am going to need some help from you guys, because I feel like I didn't understand the end of the book. Because mine, did it basically, no laughing at me please, did it basically state that the people in Mars who had sold the equipment or helped to facilitate Marco and Nereus were the people who had got the proton molecule, but then at the end themselves disappeared via that weird ring thing?
Well, my reading of it was that the people at the end disappeared were part of that, but it actually is Duarte who has the protomolecule who wasn't on the ship at the time. He's the man who's organized it. They're part of that fleet. But Sue,
Yeah.
well, I can't remember the guy's name who's on the ship at the end. He is part of that fleet, but not on the ship with Duarte on it.
Oh, okay, so the protomolecule was elsewhere, because I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Is that just now closed off? Okay. So okay, that makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did love that revelation, though, that actually for all of the nastiness and the missing ships of Marco, that actually something was Monica's original thing that the alien technology was eating ships or doing some of them ships was also true. I thought that was really quite good as well. And then we kind of figured that out and went, okay. Colony ships are a problem.
Some of the things we don't understand. I didn't quite get how Marcos was able to send attack Earth. I didn't get how he was able to make that happen. Did I just miss it?
Do you mean about with the asteroids?
Yeah, I didn't know how he sent them, or how did that happen. I didn't quite follow that.
Well, I thought it happened because do you remember how at the very beginning they kind of set up a similar situation where Philippe was on the building yard?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and they kind of gave you an explanation of how they basically just sped up some tungsten or whatever else, and it made a huge impact. So my understanding was from there they stole the ship paint, for lack of a better word, from Mars. It has the like stealth paint that they use to kind of keep them under the radar, and then essentially they just took some rocks and then sped them up so that they couldn't see the vector they were on. So I think in the TV series, for example, they had engines on them. I don't know. They didn't really explain exactly how they did it in the book. But my understanding is they just put them on very fast on a straight vector to Earth, and then they couldn't sense them because of the stealth paint or technology, I suppose, is a better way of describing it.
Yeah, and it was Philip or Philippe that actually was the one that pulled the trigger on the rocks. So I found that very, that was just so, that was so interesting because here you've got Marco. If anyone's brainwashed, it's Philip. And, essentially killing all these people and not even realizing what he's doing, I think. In the end, not really having a real grasp of what he's doing. And Marco put him in that position.
No, I really agree with that because I don't know him, but he has no like concept of Earth apart from this like idea essentially. So he doesn't see them as people, and the fact that there's millions of people who've just died, I don't think that would, from how it's written, it didn't seem that he would understand or grasp that concept. And like when Naomi was trying to explain it to him and like saying one day maybe you'll understand that and then it'll be a really heavy burden to bear, because at the moment it's just he thinks he's done this wondrous thing for the belt without actually seeing the flip side of it, I guess, because I think he's never been to Earth or wherever else.
Yeah.
It's classic indoctrination. It's hard for me to read this and not look at the history of Northern Ireland, and that it's often, the bad events happen to the parents, and the parents indoctrinate the kids, and the kids do it for fighting for a cause that has never really affected them in any ways. They're the ones that incite the violence and do the violence, and feel like they've done right in pleasing their parents and the people in their area. It's happened quite a lot here and continues to happen here, and it's exactly the same thing happens in the book. I think it's one of the things that's so well, as much as I can complain sometimes about some of the character interactions, I think they create the right environment all the time to make this believable. All the politics of the world are consistent, they're right, they're so well fleshed out, and it means that when events happen you kind of go, right, okay, yeah, I can see how this would have happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. What about the issue of motherhood? And do you think it was believable that Naomi left her son for so long without trying to get a hold of him somehow. What do you
Uh,
'cause-
As a lady who has no children, yes, absolutely. I really believed it. I thought it was done very well. She had to cut off that part of her life to save herself. So although it was hard, even going back to check up on it, like once you make that step, it's a downward slope you'll just get sucked back into. So from my point of view, the fact that she was on the edge of suicide, so it literally was going to be, I cannot be here anymore. This is not something that I can handle, and I cannot get him out with me. But I think a personal decision of that depth could be made, in my viewpoint. But as I said, I have no kids, so someone else who has children might have a different viewpoint.
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, there's plenty of stories in the real world where parents leave their kids. I just wondered, they wrote it well enough where we don't see that as a flaw in Naomi, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a big difference between the TV series adaptation of this book and the writing of this book. I thought it was really weak in the TV series. It just made no sense in the TV series at all. And I think that's one of the reasons that Naomi's much more sympathetic in the book now, because we get an awful lot of her internal struggle. And we actually get it repeated again and again to us to kind of reinforce it, to actually say, no, the circumstances existed that I had to go. It was either I was going to have to kill myself or I got out and kind of accepted that was going to happen. Like, you've got to remember, she didn't know Marco was going to turn into the actual monster that he's become. Either, I thought there was enough good people around, and Alexa Sin and the people that else on the ship actually said that they did take a role in helping bring Flip up or otherwise. So, I in the book, yes. In the TV series, definitely not. I thought it was really, really weak in the TV series, but here, yeah, I'll accept it.
I kind of read it as that she needed to get away to get her head back on straight, because she felt like she was losing herself, and I think she intended to go back and to get him, but I think she just didn't, for whatever reason, many reasons.
But you've got to think actually that this was her attempt to get it back. When she got the call to say he was in trouble, she bought him the ship. She fully intended to give him the way out at this stage. This was her attempt to kind of say, right, you can free yourself of this now and step outside. And then obviously realized it was too late by that time. This came along. But
Yeah.
Really interesting. But I think in reading this book, watching the series first, I think they did a really great job adapting the Amos and Peaches sections of it. I mean, really, really great job with the adaptation. I think it helped me with the visuals as I was reading it, just to kind of remember what those scenes look like.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree with that, because a lot of this book, I was just like, oh, they did this or they didn't do that. The series, and it made it much easier to kind of understand the concept, because there were a lot of big concepts going on. So it made it a lot easier to be able to get into my brain kind of what was happening at those particular pieces, which is good. Mm-hmm. I also, talking about the Amos on the Earth thing, I think that particular arc was particularly because you get to see the asteroids hitting Earth, but you actually get to see the effect of them. So they're not just a concept or an idea and you think, oh, that would be really bad. Like, you actually get to see a little bit of the devastation that is occurring with those. And I thought that they did that very well. Hard to do in the TV series, I guess, to show that amount of devastation, but in the book, I think it fleshed out enough that I could kind of join them together.
Yeah, I was surprised actually, because I think this TV series, when they filmed it, would have been one of the COVID affected ones, possibly. So actually having them all split up made sense in terms of TV series, possibly. Whereas I actually, reading this, I thought this was probably the most faithful adaptation of the book. I don't think there's very much that happens in the TV series here that doesn't happen in the book, or vice versa.
Doesn't somebody die in this one?
Yes.
In the TV series?
Yes, there was a
oh yeah, but apart from the very end, yes. But apart from that, up to that point, that's pretty much where they are. Yes, but I mean, the beats and what happens, and even how they get out of the pit is still very consistent. I kind of expected that to be different when it was written. I was like, oh, they're going to do this differently or something like that, but it wasn't. Even that whole journey up seemed to be quite consistent with what was on the TV series and the book.
Right, I was seeing the same thing with the death in the series. I was wondering if it happened here in the book, but yeah.
They did. I thought they chose such a good place for it. Well, not place because of what else happens, but like such good, like believable death. Out of all the things, how they could have written him off the show, I thought that was done very well because the way they described the what on earth is it called? The acceleration and everything else, and then what happens to you and your body and everything else. And when they got to that bit in the book, I was just like, oh, is he gonna? Oh, because of how it was written. So yeah. And then I was like, oh, he does a bunch of other stuff. How exciting.
It is the other main problem with the series of books is the lack of peril for the main characters. For as much as they put Naomi in peril in that entire book, and the amount of times that she wrote herself off as being dead, I don't think you ever believe as the reader that she's actually in peril.
No. Aaron commented, I haven't seen the series, but could visualize many scenes, especially Amos and Clarissa's prison break so clearly. The series is great for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be really interesting to read the books first and then see the TV series at this stage, because I think it's the type of TV series you'll revel in and love. Given the kind of the way they flesh it out and make it look, I think it's and it is so faithful as well.
Yeah. I watched it first. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Liv.
No, I watched it first and loved every minute of it, although I don't remember details now. And I do think it really adapts a book in a very good way overall in the end.
So anything else you guys can think of? I'm just trying to look over my notes here. But...
So we met Drummer for the first time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, that's
very much different. Yeah, very much stripped back version of Drummer than the one we know. In fact, the big scene at the end of this in the TV series, which is probably the highlight of the entire TV series, obviously is not going to happen.
I do like the fact that I do like the fact that they liked her so much. They were just like, we'll just give her a bunch of stuff to do. It's great because she's a fabulous character in the series. So it is again, I think it's quite fun seeing those nuances and differences and thinking like, oh, that's pulled from here and that's pulled from there. Oh, I had a question actually. Sorry, let's bring it back. What happened to Medina Station? I didn't get that either. It was like it went dark and we haven't heard from it, and then I don't think that was, unless I missed it, it explained.
It comes back at the end or something, because they were at Medina Station at the very end, or were they not? Or they were communicating with Medina Station at least. Yeah.
But then why had it gone dark the whole time in the book? That was something
I might be wrong. Didn't Marco have it in the end? So I don't know if that was strategic or, I don't know. Great point.
Maybe to be explored for sure in the next book. Like, it could definitely be part of that. But they did make a big deal out of it, and the fact that all of Fred's most trusted people were on Medina Station, and therefore he didn't think it could be turned or otherwise, and that kind of created that bit of, well, how deep does this OPA split run?
Interesting, because like we were saying earlier, I forget who said it, but Fred has been paranoid. I mean, the only person he trusts really is Holden, as was said earlier, and in a way, it might come true that he couldn't trust anyone in his circle, so his instincts were right.
No, definitely. I think they did play that very well actually, with the whole who has been infiltrated and everything else, and it wasn't very clear about who was on what side. So they wrote that very, very well. And about that he had his like was like almost spy speak with each of his like generals that he put in to try and so if one of them was compromised, it wouldn't compromise the rest of them as well. So that was very, very paranoid. That must be a lot of like brain energy to keep on top of that the whole time.
You know, though, he kind of put himself in that position just by the fact of who he is, because in a sense, I think Belters would always have that little grain of mistrust, you know, because of who he is and what he had done before. So it's interesting that the paranoia was running both ways. I mean, he had that paranoia too, even though his, I guess, his morals or his life perspective was really with the Belter. So that's a really complex situation.
Yeah, because he's not one of them.
Right.
So yeah, always will be that kind of like, why is he the leader, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that was referred to in the thing is that even though everything he's done and sacrificed for the OPA, they still did look at him, refer to him as being just a killer, a hard killer, nearly more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I did find, just circling back a little bit to Medina Station, I did find this recap. Later, the Free Navy is confirmed to have control of Medina Station and affiliates and commandeering civilian ships.
Mm.
There you go.
I think maybe I read the ending too quickly. Just blitz through it.
Aaron mentions exactly my plan, Chris. I normally give in and watch the TV adaptation first. And Aaron has this may be a difficult question to answer as you've all seen the TV show, I think. But which character are you looking forward to seeing the most in the next book?
I want to know now how the book handles Philip and Naomi's relationship after she's now gone back to the Rocinante.
This is sort of where our relationship with the TV series is coming to an end.
Yeah.
If you know, because there's still quite a lot of books to go, and the events that happen here on out, I don't think it's too much to spoiler to say actually the story in the TV series is a very drummer central story from here on out, I would say. So given the fact that drummer's not drummer, it's really hard to say for me what's going to happen here aside from what you just said there, Lila, which is that relationship. And again, that's been written differently in the TV series than it's in here, especially with the location of where these people are and where they left off, etc.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I'm not sure. Probably Marco Naris, because I just think he's really, really good. I'd like to see how it continues, because I think I know they put in about how he's likely to struggle, especially you trying to close the ring, because there's so much that people want to go out and explore, and how that's going to be handled. And it's always fun when the villains kind of start to unravel a little bit, because he's been very composed. And under pressure, it'd be nice to see in the next book kind of maybe what, if he does unravel, kind of how that occurs. I thought that would be really interesting. So yeah, more Marco Naris for me. Would be great.
You make a great point, Chris, that I think the series and the books, I'm sure some of it will start to deviate because there's some characters are dead or don't exist in the books. But there is a certain, without giving away too much, I am curious to see in the next book what Alex is up to.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. That would be very interesting. Very interesting.
Great point.
And I think, we're on book 5. I think the TV series only went up to 6. Is that correct?
It did. And they only did 6 episodes of 6 as well. So I imagine that it was a very condensed version of the book. So I'm just most excited just to kind of see what they decided to cut out or otherwise. You know, everything's been sort of faithful. And actually, the answer to this question is always Christian Avasarala. I'm most looking forward to seeing in the next book is always Christian Avasarala. Yeah, for sure.
I think they did go 7 seasons.
Mhm.
Let me see. The show. Let me double check though.
Oh, maybe they did 7 seasons, but it was only based on 6 books. Because I thought it was the 6th book was the last one they used. I don't know though. I could be making that up.
Could well be because the first book, Leviathan Weeks, definitely went into season 2. It was about halfway through season 2 is when that book wrapped up. Because I remember when I was kind of reading it and kind of watching it all at the same time. I went, "Oh, this doesn't end where I thought it was going to end," or it kept on going. That could be right.
Yeah. It's always weird. It's hard, because they may not always line up with the books each season. So
yeah,
it is going to be weird when we get to maybe. I guess if we're going to continue, I'm going to continue. But if we'll get to like book, because there's 9, isn't there? So I think books 7, 8, and 9 are going to be particularly interesting, just because I haven't read them previously, and B, the series finished, so it will be completely new information. So that's going to be very exciting, I think, actually, to see where it goes.
definitely, yeah. And but I'm continuing. I own all the books, so I'm continuing. But on your first read, Robin, did you read up to book 5 or 6 on your first time?
I thought I'd read up to book 5, but I don't think I did. I think maybe I was going to read 5. I think I definitely read book 4, and I think maybe I was waiting for book 5, and then it didn't come out for a while, so I stopped reading them. So this was new, but because I'd watched the series, I had an understanding of what had occurred. So yeah.
Cool. Anything else you all want to mention?
Mainly just that we kind of got what we asked for in this book, which is actually the 4 perspectives were the 4 main crew members. I think when I started the book and I realized that's the 4 perspectives we got, I was like, yes, finally, this is kind of what we wanted, which is more about each of these characters and individual rights, more about who they were, and actually the book totally gave us that. And I think for that reason is one of the reasons that's the most successful. Plus, throw in a pretty spectacular baddie and pretty good set of political circumstances, and you've got a interesting world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I fully agree. Last book, we all said that, didn't we? We were like, it'd be nice just to get back to the crew and the Rocinante. It's got so far away from that. So yeah, very, very superbly pleased that we've had some more, and they filled out the characters so much as well. So you've got a lot more of an understanding of them. It will be interesting, I think, where you said, Steve, that you quite like the characters when they weren't together. So are you a little bit worried maybe next book you're not going to enjoy it as much if it goes back to them being on the ship?
Interesting question. I think maybe I won't mind them as much because I got a little bit of I know them a little bit better now, so maybe it'll be different. But yeah, we'll wait and see. I think the villain may, with Marcos in the picture now, maybe that'll mix it up enough to kind of create some conflict or something to make them a little shake up the status quo a little bit.
I think this book too gives them more room going forward for there to be more personal conversations and insights from each of the characters, and between each of the characters where there's more meaningful conversations.
This may sound bad, but I hope we get a couple deaths eventually before the end of the series. I hope.
It does need it. Yeah, it does. It does.
We really do. We really need to, because I think the stakes are always high, and for that to make it kind of fulfilling, I think we need at least one before the end of the series. I hope one person.
Do we though? I mean, I just like being coddled a little bit. I like my peril, knowing that actually everyone's going to be okay. It's like, going back there.
That's fair.
Devote so many pages. There's chapters upon chapters, just characters that are set up to die, and they're not going to. I mean, it does get a little bit frustrating, I have to say, for me, to the point that I'm like, okay, we need a bit of peril, but this didn't need to go on for like 100 pages. That this person was on the verge of death.
I know.
Thank you, Aaron. Exactly.
Okay, Aaron, you got me. You got me.
Hilarious.
I think
don't-
it's in the
I-
channel bio, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, what can I say?
I guess the next question related to that would be not to the deaths, but related to the people being on the ship as well. Is that this book they very much set up that they're like, should we get new people? Should we introduce new crew members? So do you think next book will get new crew members, or do you think it's a bit too late to be adding in randoms at this point?
Well, we've had one added.
Well,
I know you're trying to block it out, but it didn't happen. Wasn't confirmed.
Suddenly, Robin is pro crew death again. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, let's go on.
Good point. Very good point.
Well, I read that as being very much that they did think they needed extra people, but actually absence made the heart grow fonder, and they realized that they just needed to be back together, just the four of them. I love that conversation between Alex and Holden at the end, where he said, "No more shore leave then, or no more respite." You know, he says, "Definitely not, never again." You know.
I think we'll have, we'll have Peaches, and then we'll have Bobby. Will we have Bobby? And we might get Philip. Not sure. Not sure where the book is going. And
That's just what the book needs.
Huh?
That's just what the book needs. A teenager on board, a family with a teenager or something on board.
Turn it to a sitcom. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, Aaron, you got me that time. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's this one really. I really enjoyed this one. After See Blood Burns is kind of a bummer, but this is a really good one.
Yeah.
Curious to see where it goes.
Yeah.
So Chris, if someone wants to connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
Hey, you can find me on my YouTube channel at my name that's on screen there, Chris Mullen, or you can find me on Twitter at 7 o'clock Shadow.
Yes. And Robin?
Yeah, at my YouTube channel, Bookends and Biscuits, or Twitter. I am on Instagram, but I barely use it, so Twitter's probably better.
That's what everybody says about Instagram. I have Instagram, but I barely use it.
Yeah.
Me too.
And Layla, how's the project coming along?
It's coming along. I probably will have my YouTube account set up this week, so I'll have that, coming up.
Nice.
And getting the website ready, and just just waiting on a couple of things. So,
Awesome.
but until
Looking
then,
forward to it.
find me on Twitter at El Goshi on Twitter.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you all so much. This has been such a fun ride with all of you. I'm so glad we're able to make it work, and we're all over the world, so it's great to, it's not always easy, but really, really grateful for all of you. So it's been a really, really fun time. So thanks to all of you in the comments. Aaron, thanks for keeping me in check. And thanks to all of you for interacting. Yeah, it always adds to the experience. So thanks a lot, and hope everyone has a great day. And we'll see you next month sometime. We'll keep everyone updated.
Take care.
Bye bye.